Students, in this previous slide we have discussed till Indian Councils Act 1861. So later on, like Indian Councils Act of 1892 came, and we will discuss from Indian Councils Act 1892 Indian Independence Act 1947 तक आज डिस्कस करते हैं हमें. So we will start the session. Indian Councils Act of 1892. What are the provisions of this act? The first provision is it increased the number of additional non-official members in the central and provincial legislative councils. So who are these non-official members? These are the seats which were created for Indians in both central and provincial legislative councils. So number of Indians into the central and provincial legislative councils were increased. But the official majority was maintained by them. So like official majority, so most of the people who are in the central and provincial legislative councils were Britishers itself, but Indian number of people, number of Indians in both these central and provincial legislative council got increased. So like gradually Indians are introduced into these legislative councils at both levels, central level and provincial level. And the second provision about this act of 1892 is it increased the functions of legislative councils and gave the power to discuss the budget and addressing the questions to the executive. So functions of the legislative councils got increased. First function is, or the first power given to them is, they can discuss, or the members of the legislative councils at both provincial and central level can discuss the budget and address the questions to the executive. So like legislative members are asking questions to the executive here. So legislative members are asking questions to the government. So government is accountable to this legislature. So accountability has been started through this act. A little amount of accountability of the government to the legislative members have been started. So executive is being accountable to the legislature from now. As we move forward, the third provision says that it provided for the nomination of some non-official members at the central level, central legislative council and provincial legislative councils also. So nomination of non-official members. So these non-official members ki nomination will be done both at central legislative council and provincial legislative council. Who nominates them? In central legislative council mein these members are nominated by viceroy, and in provincial legislative council mein these non-official members were nominated by the governor. And who recommend names of these people? Names of these non-official members were recommended to the viceroy by provincial legislative councils and Bengal Chamber of Commerce. And for governor, like district boards, municipalities, universities, trade associations, jamindars and chambers will recommend the names to the governor, and the governor will appoint some of the non-official members to the provincial legislative council. This is given here. See, like some non-official members of the central legislative council was appointed by the viceroy, and their names were recommended by the provincial legislative council and the Bengal Chamber of Commerce. And at the provincial legislative council level, the non-official members were nominated by the governors and on the recommendations of district boards, municipalities, universities, trade associations, jamindars and chambers. So as we go like further, this act made a limited and indirect provision of use of election. So election, like indirect provision of use of election has been started. It's an indirect provision. Indirect provision means nominating the non-official members is the indirect provision of use of elections in filling up some of the non-official seats both at central and provincial legislative councils. And the word election was not used in this act of 1892. However, the process was described as nomination and made on the recommendations of certain body. Earlier we have discussed for both central legislative council and the provincial legislative council, viceroy and the governor will nominate some non-official members based on the recommendations of some bodies. So that nomination is indirect provision of use of elections, but the word election was not used in this act of 1892. So as we move forward, like 1892 Act ki provisions are these, and we will start with the Indian Councils Act of 1909. This act is also known as Morley-Minto reforms. Why it is known as Morley-Minto reforms? Because Lord Morley was the Secretary of the State for India at that time. Lord Minto was the then Viceroy of India. So based upon these two people's names, Morley-Minto reforms, like this act is known as the Indian Councils Act of 1909 is known as Morley-Minto reforms. So what are the provisions of this act? The first provision is it considerably increases the sizes of legislative council both at central and provincial level. So legislative councils ki sizes increase kar diya tha, and both at central and provincial level. Central level mein there was 16 members earlier, but it was increased to 60 members. But provincial level mein, like many provinces have the legislative councils, right? So the number was increased, but it was not uniformly increased in all provinces. It was increased more in some provinces and it was increased less in some provinces. And the second is the number of members in the provincial legislative councils was not uniform, as I have already said. The second provision of this Act of 1909 is it retained the official majority in the Central Legislative Council but allowed the Provincial Legislative Council to have non-official majority. So, Central Legislative Councils mein Britishers are higher in number, the British people were higher in number till this Act, but provincial level mein the non-official like Indians overnumbered, means Indians were more when compared to the Britishers. So, these Indians the number was increased in the provincial level, but in the central level, even though the increase of the number of the Indians was done, but they were less when compared to the Britishers. Here in provincial level, provincial bole to state level mein, Indians were more when compared to the British officials. So as we move forward, it also enlarged the deliberative functions of the legislative councils at both central and provincial level. For example, members were allowed to ask. Earlier it was allowed to discuss the budget, like functions of the legislative council allowed to discuss the budget. Through the Act of 1892, like budget was allowed to discuss and they can pose questions. Questions can be posed to the executive. Here they also increased the functions of the legislative councils, like members were allowed to ask supplementary questions. So they can ask questions in the question hour, supplementary questions, and more resolutions of the budget. So discussion on the budget was given through 1892, resolutions was given through the Act of 1909, and supplementary questions can be asked by the legislative members. It provided for the first time association of the Indians with the Executive Council. This is most important. Executive Council of the Viceroy doesn't consist of any Indians prior to the Act of 1909. Like through the Act of 1909, the executive councils of the Viceroy and the governors, like Indians were taken into the executive councils. And the first Indian to be taken into the Viceroy's executive council is Satyendra Prasad Sinha. He became the first Indian to join the Viceroy's executive council. And he was appointed as a law member in the Viceroy's executive council. So as we move forward, it introduced a system of communal representation for Muslims by accepting the concept of separate electorate. So what is the separate electorate? Electorate, like for legislative councils, there will be elections from this Act of 1909. So इसीलिए like for elections they have made whole British ruled India into small parts. From each part a representative, like people will elect a representative who represents their problems to the central legislative council. So people like present day, like the India is divided into different parts called as constituencies, and through these constituencies we will vote a person whom we like. He represents us in the legislative councils. So like they have started communal representations for the Muslims. So like in the Muslim people majority region mein, like all the Muslims will elect only the Muslim representative. So like Muslims are given chance of electing their own representatives through this act. It is known as separate electorate. Under this, Muslim members were to be elected only by the Muslim voters. Hindu voters should not there is no provision given to the Hindu voters, or the no power to vote was given to the Hindu voters to these Muslim members. So they, like Muslim members were given they're separate or they were elected. These Muslim members will be elected by the Muslim voters only. Thus this act legalized communalism. Communalism bole to Hindu and Muslim, so the key division, so division between different religions was started. Division between different religions was started, and the seed of this started by this fellow Lord Minto, and he came to be known as father of communal electorate. So like they started the policy of divide and rule. So इसीलिए like Muslims members can elect their own representative, and like he will represent them in these legislative councils. Sixth provision of this act is it provided for separate representation of presidency corporations, chamber of commerce, universities and zemindars. So like separate representation in the legislative councils. So all the some of the members from these presidency corporation, chamber of commerce, universities, zemindars will be nominated to this legislative council to represent these people. So this is about the act of 1909. And as the 1909 completed, the British Parliament enacted another act called as Government of India Act 1919. So on August 20, 1917, the British government declared for the first time that its objective was gradual introduction of responsible government in India. So August 20, 1917 में British government ने declare कर दिया था. So what is its objective? Its objective is to introduce a responsible government in India. So what is this responsible government? Responsible government in the sense is like we will elect representatives, and from these representatives or the legislators, like from these legislators, like the majority, which party gets the majority, they will form the government. If this government is executive, means who implements the law. These legislatures were the legislative wing. Bole to they can make the laws. So if this executive is answerable to the legislature, then that sort of government is known as responsible government. So through this Act of Government of India Act 1919, it want to bring that the executive or the government should be responsible to the legislature. So like boleto, executive should be responsible to the legislative councils. So it want to introduce the gradual responsible government in India. So इसीलिए the Government of India Act 1919 was made through the Parliament, enacted, which came into the force in 1921. 1921 में like it came into the force, and this is also known as Montagu-Chelmsford reforms, because Montagu was the Secretary of the State for India at that time, and the Lord Chelmsford was the Viceroy of India. So, based upon these Montagu and Chelmsford, the Government of India Act 1919 is also known as Montagu-Chelmsford reforms. The first, like we will discuss about the provisions of the Act now. So the first provision of this Act is it relaxed the central control over the provinces. So, central control was less or no more on these provinces. Like they were there, but limited power, limited control of the center on the provinces was there. Why? Like demarcation and separating of the subjects has happened. So the total subjects where they can make laws or where they can implement laws were divided into two. There were the central subjects and provincial subjects. So इसीलिए the central control over the provinces was relaxed or reduced, and that happened due to demarcating and separating the central and provincial subjects. The central and provincial legislatures, like we have the central legislature and provincial legislatures, right? So they were authorized to make laws on their respective lists of subjects. So center should make the laws on only the central subjects, and the provinces should make laws on this provincial subjects. However, the structure of the government continued to be centralized and unitary. So the structure of the government is till now, it is central, means all the power is vested in the center itself, and it is unitary. So like everything should come under the center itself. But their control was relaxed. The central control on the provinces was relaxed. So like the central list may कोई laws हो तो the central can make, and the provincial list में like the provinces can make laws. So as we move forward, it further divided the provincial subjects. So the total subjects was divided into central subjects and provincial subjects. इस central subjects में central can make the laws, and provincial subject में provinces means states में can make the law. And these provincial subjects were further divided into transferred subjects and reserved subjects. The transferred subjects and reserved subjects, it was further divided. So what are these transferred subjects and reserved subjects? Transferred subjects were to be administered by the governor. So these were administered by the governor, means it was ruled by the governor, and with the aid means help of ministers responsible to the legislative councils. So by taking help from these legislative council members, ministers, so from these ministers, like the governor can make laws on these transfer subjects. And the reserve subjects may, on the other hand, they were also administered by the governor, but he takes help from the executive council without being responsible to the legislative council. So transfer subjects the total provincial subjects is divided into transfer and reserve subject. Transfer is also administered by the governor, reserved also administered by the governor. But while making laws on the transfer subjects, governor will take help from the ministers who is responsible to the legislative council, because they got, like, government is formed from this legislative council. Which party got the majority, they will form the government from these legislators itself. So the ministers are responsible to the legislature, like provincial legislatures, and the transfer subjects may, whatever the laws made by the governor, he will take help from these ministers. But reserve subjects may, governor administers the things, but he will take help. Governor takes help from the executive council, his executive council, governor, like viceroy's executive council. This executive council is not responsible to the legislature. So reserve subjects may, like defense and all the stuff will be kept, and the transfer subjects may small like agriculture, and all these subjects were kept under transfer subjects. So as we move forward, this dual scheme, bole to in provinces may, like, there will be transfer subjects and reserve subjects, right? This dual scheme of governance was known as diarchy. So it is called as diarchy. This is total subjects. The provincial subject is divided into transfers and reserve subjects. Subjects is nothing but like different portfolios: agriculture, police, education. All this comes under different subjects, different fields. So this dual scheme, transferred and reserved subject, the total subject is divided into transfer and reserve subject. This dual scheme of governance was known as diarchy, and the term derived from the Greek word diarche, which means double rule. Double rule means we have seen right here, like it is divided into two, double rule. However, this experiment was largely unsuccessful. It is absolutely unsuccessful because there is a clash between this governor and the ministers and legislative council also. Governor and legislative council. So that's why it is largely unsuccessful. And this act, the Act of 1919, introduced for the first time bicameralism, means presence of two houses. Like present, we have both houses like Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Like at that time also, we have two houses, that is upper house and lower house. Upper house is known as councils of state, and lower house is known as legislative assembly at the provincial level. At the Indian Legislative Council, at the central level, bicameralism was started, and the direct elections were held in the country. And the provincial level also, this bicameralism was started, and thus the Indian Legislative Council was replaced by bicameral legislature. The Indian Legislative Council means Central Legislative Council was replaced by this bicameral legislature. This bicameral legislature consisting of the upper house, councils of the state, and the lower house, legislative assembly. So these, in both the houses, there were the members who got directly elected and who got nominated also. The Rajwadas or the princely states were given permission to nominate some persons to this upper house, councils of state, and British ruled states, like British ruled territories, the direct elections were held and the members were enters, or the whoever wants, they enters into this lower house. So the Central Legislative Council was divided into upper house and lower house. Upper house is known as Council of State, like Rajya Sabha. Lower house is the Legislative Assembly, like Lok Sabha. And the majority of the members of the both houses were chosen through the direct elections only. It required, like earlier it was only one person who can enter into, like only one person was entered into the Viceroy's Executive Council. Now it required 3 out of 6 members of the Viceroy's Executive Council except Commander-in-Chief should be Indians. So earlier it was 1909 May, only one person was there out of 6. But in 1919 Viceroy ki Executive Council mein, like 3 members should be there except the Commander-in-Chief. And it extended the principle of communal representation by providing separate electorates for Sikhs, Indian Christians, Anglo-Indians and Europeans. Earlier I have said in 1909 this communal electorate were given Muslims. So the Muslim people can only elect the Muslim representative. Here it was extended to Sikhs. So six people can elect their own representative Sikh, and Indo-Christians can elect their own representative Indo-Christians only, and they can vote for him only. And Anglo-Indians can vote only for the Anglo-Indian. Europeans can only vote for Europeans. So that was this principle of communal representation was extended to all these 4, Sikhs, Indo-Christians, Anglo-Indians and Europeans in 1919. Before this 1909 May, Muslims were also given the principle of communal representation. And this act of 1919 granted franchise. Franchise means right to vote. So it granted the franchise to the limited number of the people. So only limited number of the people were given right to vote on the basis of, on which basis they have given the right to vote? Based upon property, based upon tax, and based upon like tax or education or property. By seeing this, like they have given these persons, like some people were given right to vote in these direct elections for both the legislative councils at central and provincial levels. And the 7th provision is it created a new office of High Commissioner for India in London. London में इंडिया के लिए न्यू ऑफिस क्रिएट कर दिया था. इट इज़ हाई कमिश्नर फॉर इंडिया, एंड some of the like powers of the Secretary of the State was transferred to him. So the burden of the Secretary of the State will be reduced by appointment of this new office called as High Commissioner for India in London. So, and the 8th provision is it provided for the establishment of Public Service Commission. Public Service Commission is a recruiting body of the civil servants. So like it established through this act of 1919, Public Service Commissions was established. Hence a Central Public Service Commission was set up in 1926 for recruiting civil servants. So from this 1919 act onwards, like 1926 में a certain Central Public Service Commission was set up to choose the civil servants. So like from that day onwards, like civil servants were directly recruited through examination which is conducted by Central Public Service Commission, CPSC. The 9th provision of this act of 1919 is it separated for the first time provincial budgets from the central budget. So provincial budgets were differentiated from the central budget. So like provinces, all the province legislative councils can pass their own budgets with respect to their own states or the provinces, and the Central Legislative Council will make its own budget. So it separated for the first time provincial budgets and central budget, and authorized the provincial subject to enact or pass their own budgets. And the 10th provision of this act is it provided for the appointment of statutory commission. Statutory commission means backed up by law. So like Parliament will pass a law, British Parliament will pass a law, and through this law the commission will come to India to inquire into the reports on this act working. 1919 act ki working kaisa hua, like is it good or is it going on very well in India? To inquire all these issues, a statutory commission will be appointed after 10 years. After 10 years of this act of 1919, So like it was appointed, and this commission is known as Simon Commission. So as we move forward, we will learn about this commission. So these are the 10 provisions related to 1919 की act. इसमें like budget was differentiated between provinces and the center is very important, and the extension of communal electorate is also, diarchy is also important, and plus diarchy means dual rule, means the provincial subject or subjects was divided into two subjects, that is transfer subject and reserve subject. It is known as diarchy, and bicameralism is also introduced through this act. As we move forward, the Simon Commission. So in November 1927, it's like itself 2 years before the schedule. Actually 1919 like act was passed, but it hit the grounds in 1921. So actually it should be around 1929 में commission को British Parliament should make a through the statutory or through the law, like they should make a commission to inquire into this working of the act of 1919. So 2 years before, like it should come in 1929, but in 1927 November only this commission was enacted, and the British Parliament announced the appointment of 7-membered statutory commission under the chairmanship of Sir John Simon. So इसीलिए इसकी नाम Simon Commission की तरफ को जानते हैं हमें. So the chairmanship is done by Sir John Simon, and the members were 7 members. So they will report on the conditions of the India after the enactment of the act of or the 1919 act की enactment की later, like how it is working in India will be reported by the 7 members headed by the John Simon, and they will prepare a report on it and they will submit it to the British Parliament. So what is wrong with it? What is wrong with this commission? So what is wrong with this commission means all the members of this commission were Britishers. So it was white commission. So all the people were Britishers, whites. And all the parties boycotted this commission. So all the parties in India, bole to Indian National Congress, Muslim League and all the stuff, all the peoples have boycotted this commission, and they have said that like these, even one person was not included, like one Indian was not included in this commission to know about India. So these commission want to know about the India condition after the passage of 1919 Key Act. But even one Indian was not included in this commission. So इसीलिए the commission all the people, like all these parties have organized the slogans and Simon Go Back movement in this turmoil situation only. Like these commission has submitted its report in 1930, and it's recommended some of the major provisions like abolition of the diarchy. So there's dual rule, like provincial में provincial subjects is divided into transfer and reserve subject, इसको abolish करना था, and the extension of the responsible government in the provinces. So provinces में governor की extensive powers को छीन कर, like they should remove some of the important powers from the governor, and it should be given to the executive or the government of the provinces, and the establishment of the Federation of the British India should be done, and the princely state, like uniting the princely state with the British India, a federation should be established, and communal electorate should be continued. So what are the major 4 recommendations which was given by Simon Commission? The first one is abolition of the diarchy in the provinces and the extension of the responsible government in the provinces. And third one is establishment of the federation consisting of the British India and princely states. So all British Indian territories and these princely states will come under one umbrella called as India, and the continuation of the communal electorate. So these are the main recommendations of the Simon Commission at that time. So as we move forward, to consider the proposals of this commission, the British government has convened 3 roundtable conferences. So in these 3 roundtable conferences, they have discussed the report which was submitted by the Simon Commission. So after discussing the report in these 3 roundtable conferences, like who were the members in these 3 roundtable conferences, or who are invited for this 3 roundtable conference? All the representatives of the British government, British India and Indian princely state were allowed for these roundtable conferences. Bole to all the parties in India and all the provincial ki governors and provincial ki executive members and governors की executive council members also allowed for these roundtable conferences, and central की viceroy and his council and the executive members of the center were also, like these are the executives, right? Some of the important legislative members, and even like Indian National Congress ki Gandhi and different peoples were invited, and many like princely states ki different kings were also invited for discussion of the Simon Commission and the conditions of India through these 3 roundtable conferences. Like Gandhi doesn't attended this first roundtable conference, and later on like in the second roundtable conference was attended by the Gandhi after Gandhi-Irwin Pact. It is a pact signed between the Gandhi and the Irwin, the then viceroy. Then third roundtable conference was not went by Gandhi. So after these 3 roundtable conferences and discussion of the Simon Commission key report, on the basis of this discussion, the British government has issued a white paper on the constitutional reforms that should be brought in India. So which are the constitutional reforms that should be brought in India? They have clearly discussed on the paper. So it is known as white paper. White paper bole to it's not white in color. It's about the constitutional reforms that should be brought in India through this. Like for that, the British government or the British Parliament has to pass an act called as Act of 1935. And so this report, which was the white paper of the constitutional reforms, were given to the Joint Select Committee of this British Parliament, and they approved it. And most of the recommendations of this report was incorporated in the next Government of India Act 1935. So this is the largest act made by the British Parliament to India, and many of the provisions of this act were taken in our original Indian Constitution also. So like this is the background related to the Simon Commission as we move further and studies the Communal Award. So what is this Communal Award? In August 1932, Ramsay MacDonald was the then British Prime Minister tha. So what he have done, he announced a scheme of representation of minorities which came to be known as Communal Award. So what is this representation of minorities? Like for example, we have communal electorate for Muslims, Sikhs, Indo-Christians, Anglo-Indians, Europeans, all these people. So now this communal electorate means like Muslims can vote only for the Muslim representatives, Sikhs can vote only for Sikh representatives. Then these Ramsay MacDonalds want to bring this communal electorate system for even depressed classes in India. So SC/ST people के लिए भी ये लाना, like depressed class people can only vote for the depressed class representatives, SC and ST, like depressed class representatives की, like scheduled caste representatives की vote करने के लिए, like it was also like they also want to give the permission, and it was passed. But what happened? It is a divide and rule policy of the Britishers. Like they want to divide even the Hindu joint electorate also. Like all the people of the Hindu should be one, like unity. Like they have divided many different religions like Muslims, Indo-Christians, Sikhs from this Hindus through their divide and rule policy. Now they want to bifurcate these Hindus also into 2 sections, like depressed classes and other classes. So इसीलिए like it was a patch for India. It is not, India will not look united. It will looks very patched, and like later on also like many problems will be arised due to this thing. So Gandhiji was distressed over this extension of the principal communal representation to the depressed classes also. So he undertook fast unto death in Eravada jail in Pune. Pune में Eravada jail में. So going against to the order which was Communal Award, which was given by Ramsay MacDonald, and he don't like it. He want Hindus to be united, and like the joint electorate system, Hindu joint electorate system should undergo. So to get this award modify करने के लिए Gandhiji have took this fast unto death in the Eravada jail, But later on what happened, at last there was an agreement between the leaders of Congress and depressed classes. So the Communal Award was not accepted by the depressed classes. And what is Communal Award? Like it was extended to depressed classes means like depressed classes can vote only for the depressed class representative. So this was not liked by the Gandhi because it will bring some division in the unity of the India, unity of the religion Hindu also. So इसीलिए like he undergo fast unto death, and at last an agreement was brought between the leaders of the Congress like Gandhi and leader of the depressed class Ambedkar. So this pact is known as Pune Pact, and Pune Pact में like Hindu joint electorate, like all the Hindus can vote for all the Hindus. Hindus includes all the people and depressed classes also. But in this joint Hindu electorate, some reservations. So some reservation or some seats will be reserved for the depressed classes. So like they can contest elections in these reserved seats. So by this Hindu joint electorate system and the unity of the Hindus and all of the people have came together. So later on, like Government of India Act 1935 was passed. So what is this? This act marked a second milestone towards completely responsible government. Starting 1919 May is the first milestone for the responsible government, and it is a second milestone for the completely responsible government. It was a lengthy and detailed document. Like why it is lengthy and detailed document? Because it consisting of 321 sections and 10 schedules. So it is the most lengthiest act passed by the British Parliament to India. As we move further, we will look at the provisions of this Government of India Act of 1935. So it provided for the establishment of All India Federation consisting of the provinces and princely states. See, the total India is not ruled entirely by the Britishers. Some part of India was ruled by the Britishers. It comes under British territories, and some parts were ruled by the princely states, which was ruled over by kings. So king will rule these princely states, and some British ruled territories were ruled by these British territories, or British occupied territories were ruled by governors and viceroy. So the whole India is divided into two. So through this act, they want to bring all these like British territories and princely states into one framework. That framework is Indian Federation. So they want to establish Union of States. Union of States is known as Federation. So they want to unite these princely states with the British territories to make Indian Federation. But this federation doesn't came into existence because princely states never accepted to join in this federation. So these princely states was not accepted. So like this federation never came into existence. The second provision of this act is it divided the powers between center like total whatever the powers which was provided by the center, or the center has some powers, right? And these were divided into three. The powers between the centers and the provinces were divided into three, and they were, first thing is center list. So center can make the laws on it, and the second thing is state list. State can make laws on it, and the third thing is concurrent list. So center and state both can make laws on it. So the total powers which was possessed by both centers and states were divided into two. Like executives of the both center and state possess some powers, right? They were divided into these three lists. First list is known as federal list or the central list, and like who can make laws on this list? The center can make, and there were 59 items in this. And the second thing is provincial list, that is state list, and it is for provinces. Like provincial legislative councils can make act on it. So they consisting of 54 items. And the concurrent list, in this list may like both federation, like federal union, and the provinces can make laws on it, and the total items were 36 items. And whichever the powers which were not fallen under these three categories, so three categories may some powers were not fallen, and those powers were named as residuary powers. These residuary powers which was not fallen under the central, provincial and concurrent list were given to the viceroys. However, the federation never came into existence, as I already said, that princely states never like joined with India. As we further on, and the second thing is it abolished the diarchy in the provinces. So diarchy bole to the total provinces ki subjects were divided into two, transferred and reserved subject, as I have said earlier in the earlier acts. So this diarchy was abolished in the provinces, and provinces were given autonomy. So autonomy means self-rule. So the direct elections were held. So whoever won in these elections, they form government, and this government is responsible to the legislature. And this government is responsible to the people whom they have elected, like people of the states. And that the second thing is governor's role. The governor will also be head of the state, but the governor's role was limited. So by this, like provincial autonomy was given to the provinces, and the governor's role was limited, and responsible government was introduced in the provinces. The provinces were allowed to act as an autonomous units of administration in the defined spheres. So defined spheres may they can make their own laws, their own rules, everything. Like they have their own self-rule sort of thing. So diarchy was abolished in the provinces, and the provincial autonomy was introduced in the provinces. Provinces means states. As we further on, moreover, the act introduced responsible government in the provinces. Earlier point we have discussed, the governor was required to act. So the governor's power was also reduced. His power was also reduced. He have to act according to the advice of the ministers responsible to the provincial legislature. So governor's role was reduced, and he have to act according to the advices given by these ministers who are responsible to the legislature only. So what is this thing? So like in some province, elections were held. These elections may we will elect the legislators. So these legislative members we will elect. So there is a function. What's their function? To make laws. So in this legislature, some members, like who got the majority, they will form government. They does the work of executive, and they implements the laws which was passed by the legislatures. So, and now also the same thing is happening. Like the head will be governor, and this government or the executive should aid and advise the governor, and whatever the advices which was given by the executive only should be followed by the governor. The governor role is limited, and indirectly this executive is answerable to the legislature. So a legislature can ask questions to the executives, and these government will have the chief ministers and ministers. So these ministers will aid and advise the governor. So the governor's role was limited here. This came effect in 1937. After the Act of 1935, within 2 years it came effect, but discontinued in 1939. And later on, the third provision of this act is it provided for the adoption of diarchy at the center. So center may, like earlier it was there only in the provinces, like the provincial subjects was divided into transfer and reserve, but this act, 1935 act, abolished it. But now the center was divided into, central subjects was divided into transfer and reserve subject, like viceroy with the aid and advice of the council of ministers of the government of the center, like the transfer subjects will be there, and viceroy will also head the reserve subjects, but he will be helped by the viceroy's executive council. So these sort of diarchy means dual rule was started in the central level, and the federal subjects were divided into reserve subjects and transfer subjects. So federal means union subjects was, central subjects was divided into reserved and transfer subjects. However, this provision of this act did not come into operation at all. So never ever center may dual rule or the diarchy was established. And it introduced the bicameralism in 6 out of 11 provinces. 6 out of 11 provinces में bicameralism को establish किया था. What is bicameralism? Presence of upper house and lower house is known as upper house, and lower house is known as bicameralism. 2 houses, presence of 2 houses in the legislature is known as bicameralism. So 6 of the 11 provinces bicameralism established किया था. The legislatures of Bengal, Bombay, Madras, Bihar, Assam, United Provinces got the bicameral legislature consisting of the upper house and a legislative assembly called as lower house. However, many restrictions were placed on them, and it further extended the principle of communal representation. So some section of the people can vote for some section of representatives. Earlier it was given for Muslims, Sikhs, Indo-Christians, Anglo-Indians, and other people. Like now it was extended even for depressed classes like scheduled caste, women and labor also, but this provision also never came into existence, or this provision was never okayed, or this provision was never implemented in India. So these a principle of communal representation was never given to depressed classes, women and labourers, and it abolished the Council of India established by the Government of India Act 1858. So this Council of India, it's a 15-member body who assists the Secretary of the State. Ye council ko they abolished this council, and the Secretary of the State for India was provided with the team of advisors. Like this 15-member council was abolished, and only team of advisors were given to the Secretary of the State. And it also extended franchise. About 10% of the total population got the voting right. So nearly 10% bole to 35 million people got the voting right in India. And it provided for the establishment of the Reserve Bank of India through the RBI Act 1934, which was passed by the British Parliament to control the currency and credit of India. So Reserve Bank of India was established through this act to control the currency and credit of India. And it also provided for the establishment of not only Federal Public Service Commission, federal means Union Public Service Commission, later it renamed as, but provincial level में भी, state level में भी public service को establish कर दिया था, and joint public service commission. So it is meant for 2 or more provinces, 2 or more states की exams or the like civil servants को चुनने के लिए they have established the joint public service commission. So total civil servants are recruited through 3 service commission. One is Federal Public Service Commission, one is Provincial Public Service Commission, and third one is Joint Public Service Commission. Federal at the central level and the provincial at the state level, and joint for more than 2 states combined together to form forms the Joint Public Service Commission to recruit the civil servants. And it also provided for the establishment of the Federal Court. So Supreme Court, the present day Supreme Court, was established in 1937. So after this, the World War II started. The World War II started the Augusta offer, like the Britishers, like it was between the Britishers or the Allied powers and Axis powers. So इसीलिए like Britishers were against the Britishers and the United States of America and the France. All these people are one side. Japan, Germany, Italy were another side. So they became like these Germany, Japan and Italy people became furious, and they started attacking on these people. So the Britishers want the help of the Indians. So easily after the starting of the World War, the Augusta offer, like the British Parliament has sent Augusta offer. Why it is called as Augusta offer? Because it was sent around August 8, 1940. What are the provisions of this offer? Like it said that Indians should support this war. If the support of the Indian were given to the Britishers, then in return to that we will give the Dominion status. So what is this Dominion status means? Like India will have its own Dominion status. Like India can be ruled by themselves, but the head of India will be the Queen, and 3 affairs like external affairs, defense and telecommunication. These 3 subjects will be looked after by the Britishers, and the Indians will be given the self-rule. So Indians will become the dominion of the England. And what is meant by dominion? Head of the India will be the Queen, but Indians will be given the right to rule themselves. And 3 subjects like external affairs, defense and telecommunication will be in the hands of the Britishers. Remaining all will be in the hands of the Indians. And they also said that the constitutional making body will be made after the war to make constitution, and Indians in the Viceroy Executive Council will also be increased. But this was rejected both by like Indian National Congress and Muslim League. So this offer was rejected by the Indians. So later on, like during the war itself in 1942, like they have started this Cripps mission. Why it is known as Cripps mission? Because Stafford Cripps was the head of this mission. It is formally called as First Cabinet Mission. So who are the members of this mission? It was sent by the British Parliament, and the members were Stafford Cripps, A.V. Alexander and P. Lawrence. And what are the provisions or what are the things that British Parliament through this Crip Mission has sent to India? They said that constitution will be framed by an elected constituent assembly, the dominion status will be given to India, and creation of Indian Federation. Indian Federation will also be done, like it is a union of British territories and princely states. And but the condition they have kept through this thing is like this Indian Federation, like all these three provisions should be accepted both by INC and Muslim League. Then only we will make a constituent assembly for making of the constitution. We will give the dominion status to India and we will create the Indian Federation. But Muslim League, it wanted separate country called as Pakistan. So Pakistan, they need the Pakistan. So they don't want to agree these things. So this Cripps mission also got failed. Then later on what happened, like the Jinnah, the Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who is the head of the Muslim League, want the Pakistan or India to be divided into. India ko two states ko, like two countries taraf se divide karna chahiye. One is Pakistan, which is dominated by the Muslim population. One is India, which is earlier, from this India only, like Pakistan should be carved out, and who are like Pakistan country should be formed from this India, and Muslim majority regions should come under this Pakistan. So like they want this Muhammad Ali Jinnah wants the northwestern frontier province ki part and western Punjab region and Assam, some parts of Assam and present day Bangladesh region. They need all these things and they want a separate country called as the India. So he wanted two dominions. So this Cripps mission was also failed due to non-agreement of the Muslim. INC has agreed it, but Muslim League not agreed it. Why? Because the reason I have stated here, like Jinnah. And before this started, like in 1942, like Gandhi started the Quit India movement and said that like 1942 ki starting phase mein, like Japan is about to occupy the it completed occupying Singapore and it is heading towards the India. So even Britishers were also very weak at that time. So Gandhiji thought that Japan is a Asian force, like it will surely defeat the Britishers and it will occupy India. So इसीलिए Britishers को हमें like India की ओर से we have to remove the Britishers from the India. So he started the Quit India movement, and Quit India movement start kara tha, and during this moment, like after this moment, what he thought to do, like he wanted independence, complete independence of India. So he don't want any dominion status, he want complete independence. So इसीलिए like before that we have these three formulas, that is CR formula and Wavell plan and Lord Atlay's announcement. What is the CR formula, Chittaranjan Das formula? Actually this Jinnah wants two dominion or the Pakistan. So CR formula, like Chittaranjan Das was a person who formulated this thing in 1944. He said that Muslim League would support the Congress demand of complete freedom. So if Muslim League supports for the Congress demand of complete freedom, then at the end this northwestern frontier province and the northeast India the Muslim populated regions wherein majority will be demarcated, and there the communal representation will be given. So Muslims will be voted for Muslims only. So you will also get represented in this whole country called as India. And he said that like even Jinnah doesn't agree for it. Then Wavell was a person 1945. He also gave some provisions or some things, plan. He proposed a plan, and in this plan what he have done, he said that the new executive council will be formed at the center, the first point, and इसमें except viceroy and commander in chief all will be Indians. So remaining like out of 6, like 4 will be Indians. They have increased 1 person, and all portfolios except defense, all portfolios will be given India, and India should be given the dominion status. So this Wavell plan was also rejected by the Indians, both by the INC and by the Muslim League. The Lord Attlee has given the announcement He said that the tide of nationalism was surging in India, and at this moment it's very tough to have or to control the India. इसीलिए India should be given independence. Like he said, Lord Attlee's announcement was done in 1946. So after this, what happened on 10th June 1946? Like Jinnah agreed to have a constituent assembly की elections. So is elections to be held for constituent assembly for making constitution. This constituent assembly will make constitution. So where elections happened, all provinces participated in these actions. Plus these were direct elections in provinces, and indirect elections were happened in the princely states. So princely states, and the proportional representation was followed. What is this proportional representation? According to the population, they have given the seats. So for nearly 10 lakh Indians, they have given one seat. So at the time, the Indians were 39 crores around, so they have given 398 seats. So for each one seat, like there were 10 lakh people, one seat will be represented by represents 10 lakh Indians. So proportional representation means these sort of proportion will be represented by a person. So out of this 389 seats, like 290 seats where direct elections happened, and 93 was given to the princely states. So here nominated, like princely, the king has nominated some people for the constituent assembly, and in 296 May elections happened. And out of this, 208 was won by Indian National Congress, and Muslim League won 73 and others won 15. And so these princely states nominated them. And in 9th December 1946, the first meeting of this cabinet mission has happened. Then as we move forward, the first constituent assembly, 9th December 1946 May, first constituent assembly meeting happened, and but Muslim League boycotted it because they thought that they don't want all this constituent, because like INC want majority of the areas, so they thought like INC people, like Indian National Congress people will don't agrees their provisions. So Muslim League boycotted it, and they started their demand for the separate dominion called as, or the separate country called as Pakistan. So इसीलिए the Muhammad Ali Jinnah has said that like on February 28th 1947, if the British government doesn't announces any bifurcation of the India into Pakistan and India, or establishment of the new country called as Pakistan, then at that time the direct action will be taken, and that day is known as direct action day. And on these days, Muslims will hit on the road and kill all the people whoever comes in front of them. And so इसीलिए like they started, the British Parliament also thought that now it's time for the to divide the country. So at the time, after the World War II होने के बाद, like elections were happened in Britain. इसमें like PM Clemens Attlee became the Prime Minister of the Britain, and he said that on June or by June 1948, like British rule will be ended in India, and India will be given complete freedom. And so इसीलिए they have sent a separate member called as Lord Mountbatten. Mountbatten was sent as the viceroy, last viceroy of India, and he said that like these British Parliament have said that to fasten up the division of country, or the fasten up to give the independence to the country. So इसीलिए on June 3rd, like this Mountbatten, on June 3rd 1947 May, he gave his own plan called as Mountbatten plan. He agreed that India will be divided into two dominions called as India and Pakistan, and two constituent assemblies will be there, and they forms their own constitution. And like through this act, like through this plan, the British Parliament has passed Indian Independence Act 1947, and the British Parliament has passed this act on July 5th 1947, and the assent was given by the Queen on July 18th 1947. So this law, or this Indian independence law, became an act, and India was granted freedom on 15th August 1947. So this is about the division of the India into two and the independence of the India. And now we will read about the Indian Independence Act 1947 ki provisions. So it ended the British rule in India and declared India as an independent sovereign state from August 15th 1947. So India is an independent sovereign, so self-ruling state. So no one is above India, or no power is above India. India can make its own decisions. So India became a sovereign state from August 15th 1947. It provided the partition of India into two independent dominions called as India and Pakistan, and they have right to secede from British Commonwealth. British Commonwealth means like it is a member nation, it's a group where all the countries which was ruled by the earlier Britain, they form a group called as British Commonwealth. So if India and Pakistan wanted to stay in this group, they can, or if the India and Pakistan want to secede or leave the group, they can leave the group. And it abolishes the offices of Viceroy, and for each dominion, Governor General was for two dominions like India and Pakistan. Governor Generals were they abolished the Viceroy, and they have established the Governor Generals for two dominions. So these Governor Generals will be the head of the two countries. Like Muhammad Ali Jinnah became the Governor General of Pakistan, and this Mountbatten became the Viceroy, first Governor General of India, and who was to be appointed by the British King on the advice of the Dominion Cabinet. So each Dominion Cabinet will give its own decision. So on the basis of the decision only, the Governor Generals of the two dominions will be appointed. And His Majesty government in the Britain have no responsibility over the governments of India and Pakistan. So His Majesty government will have no role or responsibility on the government of India and Pakistan, and it empowered the constituent assemblies of the two dominions to frame their own constitutions. Two dominions bole to two countries, to frame their own constitution and adopt constitution for their respective nations, and they can repeal any act of the British Parliament, like from starting of 1773 to 1947. Like they can repeal even the Independence Act also can be repealed by themselves. I think it empowered the Constituent Assembly of the both dominions to legislate for their respective territories till the new constitutions were drafted and enforced. So Constituent Assemblies to legislate some of the rules and regulations before the enactment of the Constitution itself. This Constituent Assembly should legislate some rules and regulations so they can have their own rule in their own countries. And no act of the British Parliament passed after August 15, 1947 was to extend it to either the new dominions unless it was extended there by a law of legislature of the dominion. So whatever the acts which was passed by the British Parliament after August 15, 1947 will not be applicable to the India and Pakistan. If they wish to apply on them, then a law should be passed by their own legislature, then only the acts which was passed, or the British Parliament, the acts which was passed by the British Parliament will be applicable to it. And it abolished the office of the Secretary of the State, SOS को abolish कर दिया था, and transferred its functions to the Secretary of the State for the Commonwealth Affairs. So SOS of Commonwealth Affairs were given the powers and functions of the Secretary of the State. And it proclaimed the lapse of British paramountcy. So British rule were completed or ended on these Indian princely states, and the treaty relations with tribal areas. So tribal areas treaty relations will be stricken down now, and the British rule over this Indian princely state was also ended, and they are free and they can join even the Dominion of India or the Pakistan, and they can remain independent. And it provided for the governance of each dominion and the provinces by the Government of India Act 1935. So each country should be governed according to the rules and regulations of the Government of India Act 1935. Till the new constitutions were framed, these dominions were, however, authorized to make modifications in this act. So they can make modifications to this act. And the 10th provision is, it deprived the British monarch of his right to veto bills or ask for reservation of the certain bills for his approval. So British monarch has no role to veto, means to strike down the bills which was passed by the Indian Legislative Council and Pakistan Legislative Council, and he cannot ask for the reservation of the certain bills for his approval, but this right was given to the Governor Generals of the respective dominions. So the Indian Governor General can do this for the Indian laws, and the Pakistan Governor General can do this for the Pakistan laws. The Governor General would have the full power to assent to any bill in the name of His Majesty. So he can assent, he can give his permission to any bill which was passed by the Pakistan or the Indian legislatures on the name of His Majesty or Her Majesty. It designated the Governor General of India and the provincial governors as the constitutional heads of the state. So they were not just the heads, they were constitution heads. They were described or they were prescribed in the constitution as the heads of central and the state. They were made to act on the advice of the respective councils or ministers in all matters. So whatever the councils or ministers says, these people should act accordingly. And the 12th provision is it dropped the title of Emperor of India from the royal titles of the King of England. So like he will not be called as the Emperor of India after August 15th, 1947 because independence was granted to both India and Pakistan. And it discontinued the appointment of the civil services and the reservation of the post by the Secretary of the State for India. So civil servants will not be recruited after this act was passed. The members of the civil servants appointed before August 15, 1947 would continue to enjoy all benefits that they were entitled till the time. So whatever the benefits which were enjoying by the civil servants till August 15, 1947, they will enjoy that, and all benefits will be reached them. And during 1946, the interim government was formed, and these are the portfolios of these great leaders and members. And after we got independence, August 15, 1947. So after this, actual cabinet of the Free India was formed. These are the names and the portfolios of these greater members. So by this we have completed the historical underpinnings of the India. So later on we will discuss about the framing of the constitution and the importance of the constitutions in the next lecture. Okay, thank you.